You focused a lot this morning on water productivity. Now that's very much associated with the old green revolution mantra of more crop per drop, building yields at any cost, not necessarily concerned with sustainable resource use. How do you think that's changed, and what is your institute doing about that?
Well, I do think that the criticism is important to take into account, because the tension between the use of water for agriculture and the environment lies at the heart of many different situations around the world. Just one example is in the Murray-Darling, where there's a bitter fight going on right now about how much water should be allocated to agriculture, how much water should be allocated to the environment, which in the end ensures the sustainability of the production system over the long term. It's also playing itself out, incidentally, in Nebraska, where much of the tension in some critical basins is around water for the environment and water for agriculture. And we have a situation recently where a local natural resource district has bought land from farmers in order to be able to secure the irrigation water rights and use that water to pump back into the river, so that it can sustain biological diversity.
We're talking about farmers as if they are the problem. Isn't it the whole system that results in unsustainable use of natural resources? The whole food processing complex, supermarkets, the works? Do we need to look at that in a more holistic fashion?
Absolutely. You need to have an incentive structure and so on. You have to look in a very, very broad, holistic way. But in the end, you've got to find ways to induce farmers to provide the right incentives to ensure that farmers do the sensible thing. At the World Food Prize meeting in Des Moines last October, somebody showed a picture of a farmer in Australia growing rice in a water-scarce area, and every year he was having to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to get the water, yet he kept on growing rice. And there's a failure of governance, there's a failure of the system. You can't blame necessarily the farmer. He was responding to his incentives, but there was a failure at a different level.
But you also see food waste, for instance, as a water productivity issue.
Yeah, and I emphasize that today because I do think that food waste in the end is water waste. And I don't think it's a panacea. I don't think it's easy necessarily to reduce food waste, because there are all sorts of constraints that get in the way. So one shouldn't see it as a magic bullet. But I think we have to work on the food waste side in parallel with what we do on the production side.
Now, one area of your work is the Yield Gap Atlas. Could you tell us a bit more about what that is and what you hope to achieve by that?
Yes, it's an initiative spearheaded by my colleague Ken Kassman, who is also the chair of the CGIAR Science Council. And the ambition is to be able to determine, essentially for every acre of land across the globe, what is the potential production capability, both under water control conditions and non-water control conditions, so under rain-fed and under irrigated. And then to be able to compare that in atlas form with current production levels. And that could rapidly give you an indication as to where one could invest in irrigation, where could one invest in better extension services and so on.
But new technologies take new resources, they take more energy. Can you really foresee a time where smallholders in developing countries have systems like the Midwest or East Anglia in the UK, highly advanced systems that actually cost a lot to set up and a lot to run?
I think that when you have areas of economic water scarcity, where the water is there, but people don't have access to it because they don't have the money, there the emphasis has to be on the lowest cost way of getting access to water. But where you have physical water scarcity, I think the incentives are going to come very quickly to to move towards high efficiency forms of irrigation, and the costs will need to be accompanied by either appropriate incentives or clearly the need to be able to invest more in order to get higher returns.
But if the market is going to drive innovation, what's your role?
I think our role is to accelerate the pace of innovation, and I think the role of groups like IWMI is to be able to figure out what are the constraints to adoption of innovation and how can we overcome those constraints so that more and more farmers can really take advantage of technologies that in the end are in their best interests.